Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So my name's Katie and today we're going to be doing some book recommendations that are perfect for autumn or fall as the Americans call it. So yeah, hopefully this video is helpful and we can get some kind of cozy atmospheric vibes going on. So I feel like autumnal books have, well, a special place in my heart, mainly because autumn is my favourite season. Like October is my favourite month. I feel like my favourite months of the year is like September, October, November, December. Oh, I love it. And yeah, these are more like autumnally books, and I'm gonna do a separate video which is like spooky Halloween type reads. So these ones are more like, I feel like books that I would associate with like, it's like a blustery day outside, the leaves are turning, you're curled up on the sofa with a cup of tea. Those kind of vibes, like very atmospheric. I feel like there's a lot of books in this video with like forests and that kind of vibe. So yeah, so let's get started. So the first book I have to talk about is Little Thieves by Margaret Erin. This is one of my favourite YA fantasies of last year. It is like a perfect October book. Like it's kind of fairy tale-y, which I feel like fits the vibes. It's sort of set in a very kind of European, almost like German feeling atmosphere, and for some reason I also associate that with autumn time. Like just the whole vibes of the story are very autumnal, I feel. So we're following Vanja, who is like kind of an unrepentant thief, and she steals something, I think. Oh no, she like steals the place of the princess and she forces the princess to go and be like a maid. So it's actually a retelling of a story called The Goose Girl, if it sounds familiar. But when she does this, she accidentally gets the attention of like a god who curses her. And basically the curse is she's gonna turn like to, not to stone, like she's gonna turn into ruby basically. So she's slowly like turning into a jewel. And in order to try and prevent this, she decides she's going to become a good person. It's just so entertaining. And they're like, I love the relationship in this book. So their kind of love interest is this like junior prefect who's very like scholarly and bookish. And like him and Vanja just have the funniest interactions. Because like Vanja's very like over the top and kind of, you know, like very extroverted, and like the teasing she does, it's so funny. It's such a good book. And yeah, the prose is really nice and the like atmosphere is so like, yeah, let me try. It's also got these really cool illustrations in, like look at that, they're so pretty and they're all throughout the book. And like there's gods, like I feel like Vanja's parents was like death and fortune or something, but yeah, it's just that kind of like, yeah, fairy tale type vibes. It gives me, this is a really weird comparison, but it sort of gives me National Trust property vibes, if you understand that. If you're not in the UK you probably won't, but I don't know, that's just part of the feeling I get from it. And like the mythology and everything, and not real mythology, like fake mythology for the book, but like the gods, and I don't know, it's just great, so would highly recommend. Okay, then we also have A Far Wilder Magic by Alison Saft. So this is another like very kind of atmospherically written book. It follows Maggie and Wes, and basically they live in this little village and there's a hunt going on to hunt this like magical beast. And they both decide to enter like together for reasons of their own. So Maggie wants to try and like live up to like the legacy of her mother, but she has a very tumultuous relationship with her mother. And Wes is trying to like impress Maggie, so he'll be given a chance to apprentice with Maggie's mother, although the mother is kind of an absent figure throughout the story. So Maggie sort of takes on the place of that takes on the place of almost mentoring Wes in a way. I don't think I'm explaining that well, but basically it's quite a slow story and it's just about them and their like personal growth and drama with other characters, and like set on the backdrop of this like magical hunt. I feel like that's a very sort of autumnally, like the magic hunt type vibes, I don't know. It's very atmospheric and there's just so much good like stuff, and I really like the kind of relationshipy romance. It reminded me a lot of sort of old books that I used to read, and I can't remember, like what's it called, Eva Ibbotson. I'm sure the books would be terrible if I read them now, but I remember I used to love them when I was probably about 12. There was one called like Magic Flutes, and there was one where there was like a ballerina who went to Austria. I don't know, I was obsessed with them anyway. But the relationship sort of reminded me a bit of those. And so it made me very nostalgic. But yeah, I feel like this was a really good book, so I would highly recommend, and very like autumny vibes, so yeah. Then we have a book that is not actually out yet, but I believe it comes out in about December. And it's very like late autumn, early winter type vibes, because it's almost quite a wintry setting, because it's set in like an island off the north coast of Norway or something. But I feel like just because it's got so much like fae and stuff, it also gives me autumn vibes. So that is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. And this book is in a very similar vein to like A Natural History of Dragons type thing. Like the main character, she's kind of like scholarly, a bit introverted, and she's travelled to this like really northern island. It's very isolated, to try and get some more information for her book that she's writing about fairies. And so she gets to this island and she's going off to like discover stuff about the fairies. But she is followed to the island by her like, I don't know if it's really her mentor or her like wit colleague, who is a great character. He's called Wendell, and he's just like, oh, I love him, and I love the relationship progress throughout the book. He's a very funny character. And then yeah, they end up there together and they're working on this book. And then like as the story goes on, like they have I've got something in my eye. They sort of have kind of more interactions with the Fae, and then things start going wrong. There's various travel into the Fae realms, and there's just all sorts of interesting stuff, and it's very sort of atmospheric and very like, yeah, and some of the little like fey creatures like the brownies and stuff, they just feel very like autumny to me, like, and it's very foresty and very sort of, you know, like with your stew and your hard crust bread and your cheese. I don't know if I explained that well, but like, you know, the kind of food vibes that you get sometimes in fantasy books. I feel like it does it really well in this book. It reminded me also a bit of, what's the series called, The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden, which is more wintry, but also I feel like this book kind of toes the line between like winter and autumn, so I'd highly recommend having it on your radar. Yeah. Okay, and then we have The Book Eaters by Sonia Dean. This is another one that's kind of slightly like creepy and very kind of atmospherically written, which is why I feel like it's perfect for autumn. So this is probably one of my favourite books of the year, but we are following, I've forgotten the main character's name actually. The problem is I have too much information like circling around in my head, and just character names sometimes go out the window. It might come to me. I can remember the son's name, but basically the main character is this mother, and she has been raised as a book eater. So they are like almost like vampires, except instead of drinking blood, they like have to eat books for like their sustenance. And the book eater society is very almost like Victorian and patriarchal. So they live in like our world, but they live in these like isolated country manor houses, and they're like raised in families, and then they like trade the women between families to like have children, and then they have to leave their children and go back to their original family, and it's very like, yeah. But the main character, she escapes with her son, because her son is something called a mind eater. So instead of eating, they're like a aberration of the book eaters. Aberration? Iteration? No, anyway, of the book eaters, who instead of eating books, they have to eat brains. So she escapes with her son, because mind eaters are normally sent to these like dragon people who like control them and give them this substance that like prevents them from craving brains, or prevents them from needing brains. I think they still crave them. And basically she just wants to like live a life with her son. So they've gone off, and throughout the book we're kind of discovering what led them to that point, and like the decisions that were made, and more about the like book eater lore and history. And then they also, the kind of main plot of the book, I mean, I feel like I've said a lot so far, comes because this is the substance that the mind eaters have to eat to like stop them from needing brains, has the production of that has like stopped. So they're trying to track down how they can get more of this. I can't remember what it's called, like rev something beginning with an R. And through that, trying to find that, it turns into this like spy drama. And then, yeah, it's very dramatic, but it's just so good. Like, oh, the themes and everything, like, I'm an absolute, even though I don't have any children, I'm an absolute sucker for like motherhood themes and like the sacrifices parents make for their children. And like, I feel like we need more books with like badass mothers. Like, another series I love with that is the Wolf of Oren, and Sword of Kagan. But I feel like now I've got a little not threesome, a little trilogy of books that I can recommend with that kind of trope, but like we need more. So yeah, and just there's so much good stuff about the Book Eaters that just read it. And the whole it's sapphic as well, and there's some really great queer themes about sort of like growing up in kind of a very kind of it's not like what we would consider religious, but it's very religious in a way, like very culty. So sort of growing up in that like repressed kind of society and very like heteronormative, and then like you leave it and you slowly discover things about yourself, and I don't know, I just really like that. And yeah, it's just a great book. So yeah, I would highly recommend. And then we also have the Book of Gothel, which is a sort of Rapunzel adjacent story. So we're following the kind of tale of Mother Gothel, and then her like backstory and like the real story type thing. So it's I wouldn't call it a villain origin story, because it's not, because in this book Mother Gothel is not really framed as a villain at all. It's like the kind of alternate history of Rapunzel. So we're following this character called Heloise, and she is like grown up in this village, and she's kind of a midwife essentially, but she's there's something about her, I think maybe because she has magic, she's sort of kind of ostracized, and like throughout the book things happen, and this is another book actually where there's a lot of themes of like motherhood and like not childbirth, but like around childbirth and like kind of the like midwifery and caring and stuff like that, which I really loved. And Heloise, basically she goes to this tower called the Tower of Gothel, where there's always like a healer in situ. I don't know if that's such a medical thing to say. There's always like a healer in the tower who like looks after it, and this tower is like a refuge for kind of women in trouble, whether that's like trouble with kind of domestic abuse or like trouble with pregnancy and they don't want to be, or like any sort of those kind of issues. And so Heloise basically becomes the apprentice to the Mother Gothel kind of thing, and then she then becomes Mother Gothel as the book goes on. And then there's a character who is kind of Rapunzel, and then you get the sort of story of Rapunzel as well through Heloise's eyes, and it's kind of different from what you would think of in like I don't know, I feel like the only other version of Rapunzel I know is like the Tangled version, which is a very like, because I know in the original story and stuff, like the main character, the prince character gets his eyes gorged out and it's quite dark, and so I feel like this book is a very like kind of dark atmosphere, and that kind of dark fairy tale that's like perfect for autumn, and it's very set in a forest. That's the best explanation I can give. And very atmospheric, and like the food and like all the sort of, I don't know, I feel like the healing vibes as well. I kind of see healing as like an autumny thing as well. I don't know why. But just the atmosphere and everything. Oh, it's so good. So I would really highly recommend that one as well. And then we have a new book which I think maybe came out in September, or maybe it's out in October, early October. It will probably definitely be out by the time this video goes up. But it's called One Dark Window, and this is another very like atmospheric, kind of slightly spooky vibes, in a similar vein to like For the Wolf, which is another book I'm about to talk about. And this one is following a character whose name I also can't remember, but basically ever since she was little she's had this like demon slash voice inside her who like helps her with like magic, and also kind of sometimes like takes her over to allow her to like have mad powers and like escape from things and stuff. And in the world a lot of the magic is done in like tarot cards. So there's all these people have the cards, and the cards give them different powers, and basically there's like an evil prince who is trying to get hold of or I can't remember if it's prince or king, but anyway, it's trying to get hold of these cards, which are a very rare type of a card. But the main character and like some other characters who are helping her are trying to like thwart those efforts. That was a really bad explanation, but that was kind of what the story's about. And it's very, like, I would say very atmospheric, first of all, kind of again like foresty castle vibes. I love the inclusion of like the inner demon, like I love that kind of thing. There's other books where, there's a few other books that I've read where that happens. One is Vespertine by Margaret Rogerson, which I did not like that much because I loved the like talking demon, but the main character was an absolute wet blanket in that one. But in this one, the main character was good. I liked her. Oh, she's called Elspeth, that's it. I feel like the theme of having like an inner demon was done really well. Like, although it's like a separate entity, the kind of like what makes you a monster and those kind of things were done well. And I really like the romance as well. Yeah. It is very like fantasy romance, if you know what I mean by that. But yeah, that was really good. So I would recommend that one as well. And then the final book is For the Wolf by Hannah Witten, which is a great duology, very atmospheric, the first one is like a Red Riding Hood retelling. Is Red Riding Hood? No. Maybe? Not really. It's kind of, yeah, I don't know if it's actually a fairy tale retelling or if it's just the vibes. But basically the main character, she's always been raised as like a sacrifice and for the wolf, so when she is a certain age she's gonna have to go into this forest to go and like be a sacrifice to this entity known as the wolf. And so she goes, and when she gets to the forest she discovers that there's more to the wolf than it seems, and the forest has like a curse and they have to try and protect the forest. That's a very brief part of that. But it's really good. The romance is really good. The forest and the whole atmosphere and imagery is so good. I love, as you probably guessed by this video, I love a creepy forest. All the just, yeah, imagery and stuff is so good. And then the second book, For the Throne, follows Red, who's the main character in the first book, sister Neve. Basically she sort of, through events in the first book, she ends up in kind of an underworld type environment, and which is very like perfect for October, and it's sort of her trying to escape from that. And the underworld really reminds me of the elephant's graveyard from The Lion King. I don't know why, but it does. So that's that duology, and I really like all the sisterhood and stuff as well in that series. So yeah, so let me know in the comments if you have any books that you think are perfect for autumn. I'd really love to know, because as you probably guessed, these are my favourite kind of books. Anything with like a forest or a creepy forest, just sign me right up. So yeah, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I hope everyone is having a really great day, and I will see you next time.